So I borrowed the title of her song today in this moment. And I'll get to that, but before we start talking about the topic of the day, which is the final in the series of sacred symbols. But I want to take a moment right now, and I want us all to just feel into and send love to our soldiers who gave their lives in Afghanistan, to the civilians, and the whole country. Because this country affects the whole world. It's not just this moment in this time. It's a history in the making and a history from the past. So let's just take a moment of silence and send love to the souls of those individuals who were lost, their families who are grieving, our entire country who's grieving and confused, and the entire country of Afghanistan. May they find peace. Thank you. Okay, so for those of you who are here for the first time, this might be a surprising little symbol, but we've been talking about various sacred symbols. And there are sacred symbols in every religion, and there are sacred symbols that run the thread through all religions. And if you're familiar with unity, you know that the reason we're called unity is because the founders of unity brought together a committee of people who represented all major religions and found the threads of truth that go through all religions. And those became our 5 basic principles, which I've shared with you in the past. They're on our website. They would be in our bulletin, but we didn't have anything except the cover to give you this week. I apologize for that, but the printer started malfunctioning yesterday, and I couldn't get a service call in. And I hoped a total reset and rebooting of everything was going to fix it, and unfortunately it did not. But we've been talking about the Unalom, which is affiliated with the Buddhist tradition, but the symbolism of it is universal. The spiral at the bottom represents that generation, often regeneration, of ideas, and some say our coming into human experience, but we are so much more than this one human experience. We have been and will always be eternal, and so the generation and regeneration is always happening. But once we come into a level of consciousness, whatever that might be, there's no lesser or more level of consciousness. Whatever someone believes, that's their belief. And they get to keep that until they decide to set it aside and adopt something new. But we all seem to be in unity, sort of exploring. We love to say, you come here and we don't question your answers, but you can, no, we don't answer your questions, but we question your answers. So you get to continue to explore and to grow. With the Unalom, the little, I call them switchbacks, because it's like going up a mountain. You know, you go and then you turn around and you go back, and it seems like you're not making any progress, and it's a longer road that way, but it's impossible just to drive straight up the mountain. So you have to take the switchbacks. This is what happens every time we get a new level of awakening, a new level of understanding of who we are in this world. When we accept who we truly are in this world, then we have to kind of live into that. And that's our 5th unity principle. You can understand spiritual principle all day long, but you have to put it into action. And sometimes putting it into action, well, pretty much all the time, when you put new ideas into action, you kind of struggle to fit them into your life and fit them in with the people in your lives. And people, you know, if you have a family, which most of us do, your family members tend to want you to be that same person you were growing up. They interact with you, especially if you haven't spent time with them as you've grown through your life. We go back to those same old models of behavior, right? This one is this person and this one's that person. The smart one, the silly one, the comic, the rude one. My brother has a special name for himself that begins with an A. I don't call him that, but he wears it proudly. But anyway, once we go through the challenges of wearing that new consciousness in our lives, dealing with how it changes who we are and what we choose to believe and how we show up, then we get to a little bit straighter path at the top, which is sometimes reflected with the lotus. And as I shared last week, the lotus flower is in symbolism in everything from the Bhagavad Gita to the Bible. There's a reference because the lotus flower represents this whole symbol. Because of the muck, it looks all dark and yucky, but the flower begins to bloom and it gives you that beautiful focus, that light to focus on. So it's part of our journey. So once we get to that point, we're not done. People use the word sometimes enlightened. I shy away from that because we get a new level of awareness. Enlightened kind of intimates that you have arrived, right? I'm enlightened, I'm done, I know everything I need to know. Nobody is there. We're here in this journey. It's an awareness. You have another awareness, another awareness. You might have, throughout your life, explored different practices and religions, and you gain another awareness. You might have stepped away from religion altogether, and you gained another awareness through service, through being of service to people in the world, volunteering and taking on projects that are greater than yourself. But that's the whole point, is we are more than simply this human experience. And we're meant to grow into that, however that looks for us. It's not the same for every person. So anyway, out of what looks like muck, there's always that bloom, that blossom waiting. And then once you have the awareness, it makes everything brighter around it. And then your focus can remain on the good and just not put your attention to the muck. And I know it's hard because, not to bash the media, because we need them to report things, but we have to be selective. We have to be responsible. We can't just go down, let our minds go into a rabbit hole of muck every time there's something that the media wants to bring our attention to, because we know that they sensationalize, because that helps bring people back over and over and over. So we have to choose where we place our focus, and then it brings a brighter hue to our entire world. So that's the last couple of weeks in summary. And so we're moving on from the lotus flower. This image is something that Chuck brought my attention to. So we had talked about the spiral being, it's universal across, it's really popular in Celtic, but it's also symbolic of that renewal and regeneration in many, many spiritual practices. But Chuck brought my attention to this artist named Bill, is it Worrell or Worrell?
Bill Worrell.
Worrell. Bill Worrell. It's the late Bill Worrell. But he was a Texas professor and an artist of, his pieces are really well, they're expensive for one thing, but they're beautiful and they're unique. But Chuck had the occasion to actually meet him. And what did he say? I am a drinking and dancing Baptist. So his background is Baptist.
He was a former Baptist minister.
He was a former Baptist minister. There you go. So that drinking and dancing thing doesn't go so well when you're a Baptist minister. I grew up Baptist, I know, but I'll be honest with you, I didn't know very many Baptists. My parents didn't drink, but I didn't know very many Baptists in our Baptist church who were really completely, did we ever have a Valentine's dance? Well, we all went to them. We weren't so Baptist. But to be honest, kind of like Bill Worrell. Anyway, what I want to talk to you about today, because we've talked about the spiral, but what I really want to draw your attention to today is the cross. And I love that he combines this Celtic, which the origins are pagan, with the cross, which is very traditionally Christian. Now the cross, for many people's frame of reference, has sort of a heavy, dark connotation. I had a friend one time who was going into a business meeting he was very stressed out about, and I said, well, do you have something that you can put in your pocket that you could just reach in and remind yourself when things get heated or you find it overly stressful that could bring you back to what you know is true. And he was like, I don't know. And I said, well, what about the cross? And you know what his response was? Now, he wasn't Unity. He was going to a more traditional church. I can't recall exactly which one. But his response was, no, I don't want to be a martyr. So to me, the cross represented a positive image. But to him, having a cross made him feel like a martyr. That would be tapping into a martyr energy. And so I want to, many of you would have heard this already, but I want to talk to you a little bit about what Unity's view of the cross represents. So that's a plus sign in case you can't tell. But the plus is adding, right? Plus, anytime something plus, you have a +1 at your RSVP, you have 2 + 2 = 4. It's mathematical. Your plus always means you're adding to something. It's not a taking away. It's not a subtracting. This is another image of it I just like because it's an equal balance of the intersection. It looks like a plus. But in Unity, we talk about the horizontal aspect of the cross being your finite human beginning and end, right? This is your human experience. It has a beginning and it has an end, and it's represented by a shorter line. However, the vertical line is our infinite nature. That's the part of us that we know connects in with that absolute good. When we do our prayers and our meditation time, we know the limitless and boundless aspect of us. We're not simply this human experience. Many people believe that this is it, right? The 5 senses, if I can't see it, smell it, hear it, taste it, that's it. And I was talking this week with someone about atheism, and they were, asking a question about unity. And I've told you before, you can be an atheist and come to unity. We're not trying to convert anyone. We're just trying to share and give you a path to follow if you choose. But even in atheism, there are the people who are, if I can't see it, smell it, touch it, feel it, I'm an atheist. It doesn't exist beyond what my human experience is. That's one extreme. But then there are also people who consider themselves atheists because they don't believe in the traditional, conventional explanation of God. God is not anthropomorphized in their mind. Well, that lines up pretty well with unity. I wouldn't really label that an atheist point of view, because if you believe in something beyond yourself, you can't be an atheist, right? Because even if you believe in nature, as the Tao Te Ching calls it Tao, right? That which is explained in the Tao is also what we call God. God just has been co-opted by every major religion, right? Every major religion talks about God, but talks about God from such a different perspective. But the God that we experience in our daily lives is an alive force within us. And so that's your infinite nature. You have a finite nature and you have an infinite nature. Can you buy that? Yeah, we're on board with that? I just like this one. These are all Bill Worrell's work. I just went crazy digging it all up because I love this one because the spiral is kind of like, whoosh. You've got your nice, neat, trim cross there, but then the spiral, it has so much energy in it. Because we are meant to, even in the context of a Christian belief system, which unity, we use the Bible, our foundation is Christianity, because we believe in the teachings of Jesus. We believe what Jesus taught, which is love and acceptance. That's really the main message that Jesus taught. There are a lot of different, I'll give you a quote later, of one of the writers in the Bible. A lot of writers in the Bible, the Bible was, original languages were Hebrew and Aramaic, because Jesus spoke Aramaic. Then they were translated into Greek and, finally English, and a lot of different translations. So what's lost sometimes, or translated by, depending on who, how many different translations of the Bible do you know of? 20, 100? Somebody dropped off a box of Bibles here a few weeks back, and I don't know how many translations are just in that one box. So the translations are going to have a little bit different hue to them, depending on who the translator is and what their education is. Just like I shared with you a quote, one of the verses from the Tao Te Ching, and I said Jonathan Starr is considered, his interpretation, because he has a background speaking Chinese and also in Chinese philosophy and also in spirituality, then you can more so trust what his interpretation is or his translation. But then again, you still have to take your own consciousness to the reading and bring it in for yourself. But Desjardins said, we're not simply, and I put the word simply in there, he said we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. Well, we are. So I said we're not simply, that's why in the brackets, because I added simply. We're not simply human beings having a human experience. We're spiritual beings. We're not simply human beings have a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And he was a Jesuit priest and a philosopher and a paleontologist and really a learned man and a spiritual man. And this was a quote that you hear it repeated, and attributed sometimes to Wayne Dyer, but it really is from Desjardins. But this, to me, helps us understand, and it lines up with that view of the cross, right? We are both and. We are not simply, you can't just sit on a cushion all day and meditate, because then how do you get up and go and be in the world, right? Unless you live a monastic life where everything you do is contained in that one space. But you have to do your preparation in the morning so that when you are out in the world, when you do your prayer and your meditation time, then you get centered, and when you go out in the world, you carry more of that expression of God into your thoughts and words and actions. You can become the presence. You can express that Christ that lives within you. So what we talk about, the intersection, is the now moment. So it's always the now moment. Always. Not just this moment. It's and this moment. And this moment. In every moment, our awareness can be on both our human experience and our spiritual nature. Is it easy? Not always.
Agnostic.
What'd you say?
We're all a little agnostic.
We're all a little agnostic, and we should question, right? We've been given beliefs. Some of them are in the spiritual doctrine, and some of them are about who we are. Sometimes we've been labeled, we've been told we have limitations and whatever by people who don't know that they're spiritual beings. Because if they did, they wouldn't put limits on us or themselves. But not that any intention was poor, you know. My mom had her own insecurities, so I believe in order to, what she thought was she was protecting her children by trying to give limits to them. That was her idea. She didn't want them to be hurt. But you have to at some point say, is that the truth about me? Regardless of who said it, right? If there was a school teacher or a parent or an uncle or an aunt, at some point we have to leave those ideas behind. We have come into this moment and know, yes, we are a human being and we have human characteristics and we make human mistakes, but we're also spiritual being, and that is eternal. And that's who we truly, we can focus on that. But if we're in that, I'm only my five senses. If I can't see it, smell it, touch it, feel it, if I can't have it with my five senses, it doesn't exist. That's a very limiting point of view. And in Unity, we study the Bible, but we study it allegorically. We study it from the standpoint of all the characters are me. I am some aspect of every character. I'm not just one of the characters. You know, everybody wants to be Madonna, right? We all want, not Madonna the singer, but the mother of Jesus. We all want to be that blessed one who accepts our responsibility to bring more divinity into the world. But is that how we're showing up? No, we're all the characters. We're even the donkey. You know, we have aspects of us that reflect every aspect. So this is another one of his works. I just put that in here because it's just really beautiful. But this reflects the now moment, you know, right in that. So the spiral in this now moment, in the cross, the intersection, always changing, always regenerating, always renewing. We're always renewing our perception of ourselves, our perception of people around us, always renewing our perception of our life. If you feel right now frustrated with your life or your partner or your children, you can renew that point of view in this now moment. You're not limited by the human experience because you always have that spiritual aspect, the infinite possibilities of seeing fresh and seeing new, which the spiral represents. Always a fresh, new way of looking at whatever's going on. In Romans 12:2, and I mentioned the Bible, a lot of it is written by various ones, but Paul, you may remember, was he's like the most zealot of all of the disciples. And he was writing profusely to different communities, trying to get them to understand how they could be more Christian, I suppose, is how you would say it. I'm not sure how they called it back then, if they called it Christian. But he learned from Jesus, and he felt like he was communicating to them what was communicated to him by Jesus. But Jesus, while he was very true to his nature, some people, I have a book actually called Jesus the Zealot. He was very clear about who he was, but he was not imposing. You know, people came to him and said, tell us, teach us, share with us. And Jesus was really selective. If he felt like it was going to fall on deaf ears, he'd just say, you can't receive what I have to give you. You know, there was a story of all these people gathered on the bank of a body of water. I can't recall if it was a lake or an ocean. But they were just, because they heard about Jesus, you know, everybody just kind of starts showing up like they do, right? Oh, this is the popular guy. They say he's got something to say. And he knew their consciousness was not ready to receive what he had to say. So he said, put me in the boat and let me go out into the lake. And the disciples are like, but all these people are here. They want to hear what you have to say. And he's like, they can't receive it. So he just separated himself instead of trying so hard. And believe me, I've been that person so many times. You know, somebody smokes or eats hamburgers all day, and I'm like, well, you know, here's a pamphlet, you know, the Great American Smokeout. I used to send those to my sister when they would have the big American Smokeout every year when I was in college. And you know what? I was coming truly from a place of love, but I can promise you she did not receive it well. She did not like that I would send her pamphlets because she felt judged. When we're overly zealous and people are not receptive, we're wasting our time and we're kind of building a little bit of a barrier between us and the other person. So Jesus taught love. But going back to Paul, so he was very zealous in writing. And I do agree with his advice here. He says, do not be conformed to this world. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Not according to someone else's interpretation of your relationship with God or your way of being in the world. Do your prayer and meditation time so that you can discern it. Not so that someone else can discern it for you. You discern it. You know what is right for you. And perfect means in alignment with what you know is true about who you are, that you are divine, that you are an expression of God. you know exactly when you say words and you think thoughts that are not in alignment with God, with that greater good, that absolute good in the universe. You know when you're judging someone, when you're criticizing, when you're bringing shame onto someone, trying to control them, you know you are not coming from that divine nature. You're coming from your human side, which we all do, and that's perfectly okay. But you can catch yourself and you can realign and you can renew your mind, which then allows you to renew your thoughts and your words and your actions. 12-step programs have a step called making amends. You don't have to be in a 12-step program to make amends. If you have misspoken, if you have been thoughtless, or even oblivious. You know, sometimes we have a behavior and then later we reflect back on it and we go, oh, you know, that was pretty unskillful. That was really not considering other people. It was all about what I was focused on in the moment. And the more we're focused on those five senses, everything about this moment, physically, mentally, spiritually, if we're keeping ourselves stuck to the human experience, we're probably pretty oblivious to how we're impacting others. We need that time of prayer and meditation. That's why it's important. It's an important one of our five principles. So this one I love because the brilliance, he shined up the spiral. You know, it's that rejuvenation and that renewal of our thoughts is so critical. We need that time every day. And I can hear you in your mind going, every day? I've got to meditate every day? I've got to pray every day? The fact is you're praying every day. Whether you set aside time to do it or not. Every thought and every word is a prayer. It goes out and it affects the world. So, yes, take that time in the morning, preferably in the morning because it makes your whole day better. Those of you who meditate, do you agree? Having that time set aside in the morning where you know you connect in with the truth of your being, everything else folds and unfolds and just comes together. And the more that happens, the more you realize that, oh, you primed your life to be that way. You know, sometimes we look at people who things just kind of fall together for, we think, oh, they were born under a lucky star or whatever, whatever. No, it's their expectation. It's what they've set into motion in their life. So back to the lotus flower. We can keep our mind focused on the good, focused on the unfolding of our good, that expression that is the lotus flower, not the muck. There's always going to be muck, you know. There's always going to be things that are disruptive and disappointing and can pull us in that direction, but we can acknowledge them. And in unity we call it denial and affirmation is our way of praying, right? We deny the power of the circumstances over us. We affirm what we know is true, that there's only good. So in the Buddhist tradition, they put it this way: do not dwell in the past and do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. Be present. Be present with yourself first. That's why the meditation time. And then be present in your conversations. Listen. Be open. Be malleable. Be soft. Okay, I have another poem to share with you. Let's see where, yep, we have time. Because I'm so enjoying this book, and I know that you're not all fans of poetry, and I apologize. You'll have to indulge me, and hopefully you'll feel into this. She has such a mystical heart. I love her poetry. So this poetry is called Nectarous Ones. So we're talking about flowers and nectar. We are all the nectarous ones. She says, oh, nectarous ones, you with an abundance of God spilling out of your hearts. Ones who've allowed the sacred seed to enter the dark soil of your most fertile shadows, who have let the divine kiss be planted within you, and for the rest of you to continually break open in the process of this flowering. Thank you. It hasn't been holy doctrines that have done it. You are my best access points. You have shown me this way. I hope you enjoy the poetry as much as I do, because you are nectarous ones. You have that nectar of God, that seed of the divine within you. And you can open your flower petals and you can let the world see it more so. So that's you nectarous ones. And so your weekly practice, yes, I give homework for those of you who are here for the first time. Your weekly practice is to just renew the moment. Just find time to renew your mind, renew your moment. Because sometimes when you take this time of being still, whatever you thought happened, somehow it seems different when you renew your mind. When you look back, oh, that conversation, oh, what was my part about that? Do I really think that person's intention was to hurt my feelings? No, I know that person, I know their heart. That wasn't their intention. Why was I so offended? Oh, that was about me. Wow, surprise. When you get into the stillness, when you get into that renewal phase, you can reframe anything and you can be present going forward because you've let go of whatever it was that you preconceived about that moment. Just be in this moment, and in this moment, and in this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Beverly. You always give us something to reflect on. It's beautiful.